And thank you. Hello to all of you who are on Zoom also. We have quite a few people on Zoom tonight. And this is almost like a new full house. So it feels really good to me. But what we did with this subject was the subject of Advent came up and there is no room at the inn, and there is no room at all for not voting. And this year, that's really true. So we decided to invite these wonderful speakers to come and talk to us. And we do have the basketball players upstairs, but they promised this morning before noon that the game would be over. So you know how that goes. So I can kind of tell it's a little more quiet, and it may be helpful by God's grace, literally. Anyway, we've invited Claudia and Miriam and a guy named Ben. And they're going to be our speakers for tonight. Because I think they all vote. And I think there's a chance that they have some interesting things to speak to us about. So let's see, for the technical situation here back at the bar back there, we have goodies and something to drink. And the bathrooms are up the stairs and to the right. And for all of you Zoomers at home, you know where it all is. And if you don't, you're in trouble. But welcome to the program anyway. So, let's see, have I forgotten anything? I think I've got it all. Okay, so we're going to begin the program with an opening prayer and also a land acknowledgement, which is our custom to do. So let's get yourself settled and take a deep breath. And Lord Jesus, forgive us for the times we entered a conversation without really listening. Show us how to listen with open and humble hearts, especially to people different from us. Help our leaders to do the same. Teach us as a nation to focus less on getting our way and more on loving our neighbors, especially the most vulnerable among us. Lord, give our leaders and prospective leaders the strength to be humble, soft-hearted, and willing to listen to every voice.
Amen.
And Peggy, are you somewhere? Oh, good.
My name is Peggy Briggs, and I've been a member for a long time of this church and also of the Pathways for Justice. And I would like to read the land acknowledgement that was just referred to. We offer appreciation and respect to the original inhabitants of the land we are on, including the Nisenan people, the Southern Maidu, the Valley and Plains Miwok, the Winton Patwin peoples, and the people of the Wilton Rancheria. We honor the native people who came before us and still walk beside us on these ancestral lands. And I have been given the permission from our leader, Betsy, to share something with you that came to me today on the internet this morning. And I think it was providential, and some of you may have received it also from the Franciscan the Action Network. And I know that all of us have probably been horrified, I know I have, about what's happening in the Middle East. The devastation of the Palestinians and the traumatic experiences of the Israeli hostages. And it's good to know, what can we as people of faith do about it? Well, Franciscan Action Network is asking all of us if we want to, and I'm asking you to join in a special Advent project to bring peace to the Middle East. And what they have done, you'll see on your table, there are 2 flyers, which we printed from the email. And what they've done, I think it's really creative. They have come up with a Christmas card, which they're asking us to send to the president and to our senators. And you can print this on your computer, off of your computer. And you have Christmas cards on the table. If you would like to, and it's lovely, it says, please support a lasting ceasefire in Gaza and a just peace in the Holy Land. And I think that's something that all of us can agree to. Anyway, if you want to do it, there's enough on the tables for each of you to take one. And so we're suggesting that one you can address to the President Biden. And on your flyer is the address. And there's envelopes. So you can address the envelope. You could sign your name and your address to show that you're from this area. And also, don't forget to address it. Leave it here. If you choose to do this, we'll put a stamp on it and mail it. And then if you want to send something to Senator Padilla and Senator Butler, you can do that also, but you'll have to print that at
Playing
home.
Jeopardy?
If you don't have access to a printer, come to me afterwards and I'll make sure you get some other cards. Oh, and for the Zoomers, we're going to put a link in chat and we'll follow up with an email so you'll be able to participate as well. Thank you.
We will start by introducing the most beautiful women in the room. And that's because they are here supporting voting. And our leaders, Claudia is with the League of Women Voters, which many of you may be part of or know of. And that is a nonpartisan group that I've in the past been part of. And she's here tonight to give us some special insights on what her plans are. And then Miriam is here from the I forgot. Miriam.
From the diocese.
From the diocese.
That's all.
The word, you guys, guess where I'm going. But I'm not, I don't believe in it. So, Miriam, thank you very much, and Claudia, thank you very much. If you would begin speaking, introduce yourself, tell about what you do for work, and then also, one of the things I'm curious about is, from your standpoint, what will the next year be? What are the goals that you'll have for the next year? Do you want to start, Claudia?
Do I need to push something on?
It's
this?
ready.
My name is Claudia Bonsignor. I'm on the board for League of Women Voters, Sacramento County. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan grassroots organization working to protect and expand voting rights and ensure everyone is represented in our democracy. We empower voters and our democracy through advocacy, education, litigation at local, state, and national levels. Membership is open to all genders. Our goal is to boost voter participation across all age and community levels. What does the next year hold? I think there's going to be a lot of activity. You're going to be hearing a lot from candidates. One of the things the league, our county league does is we also help to manage forums, candidate forums, and sometimes forums regarding ballot measures. On our website, lwvsacramento.org, you'll start to see on the right-hand side a calendar of public forums that are starting to already be set up. A number of them will have Zoom, but the Zoom link's not created yet. So you'll need to go back and check. But our goal is to explain to people who may think that their vote doesn't matter, the significance of voting. We work with the registrar of voters to help people understand the process. And ultimately, we would just like to see everyone who's eligible participate in the vote process.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Miriam Sammartino. I am the director for the Office of Catholic Charities and Social Concerns for the Diocese of Sacramento, which is a mouthful. But basically gets divided into two major parts. One is the Catholic Charities side. I'm Bishop Liaison to our 6 Catholic Charities agencies throughout our diocese, which covers 20 counties. And the second half of my role, which I find extremely exciting, is the social concerns part. And that really encompasses education, formation, advocacy, and really tackling a lot of the really tough issues facing our society, whether it be immigration, racism, the unhoused, care for creation. Those are the top 4 that we really focus on. We also work, on supporting international efforts through CRS. So part of my role is to, one, be in touch with the parishes to see what is going on in their community, right? Because as you can imagine, even within Sacramento, a parish in Midtown is very different than a parish on the outskirts. The concerns and the issues that you're facing are very different. So how do we help parishioners, our pastors, understand how do we respond to those needs? How do we respond in a way that is respectful, that brings people together, but also at the end of the day, comes really for the common good of all. Excuse me. In terms of some of the goals that we have for the upcoming year, which is an election year, which is, again, one of those that really tests who we are as a society, is really education. Education and building relationships, because that's really going to be the way that we change people's hearts, the way that we bring a reality to a lot of these issues, right? A lot of times we talk about a topic, immigration, unhoused, and it seems very cold and separated from the actual person who's living that experience. So how do we connect that lived experience to every single person throughout the Diocese of Sacramento, so that when you are going to vote, you have that person in mind? You think about what are their footsteps, what are they living, and how's my vote really going to change or impact them, right? And it could be somebody you love, and it could be somebody that you don't even know, but that vote is really important. So for us, that's really going to be our main goal this year. Yeah.
Well, those are high goals. And I'm wondering if any of you have any kind of questions about voting that you would like to know something more about, or about, because they do have the league brought a bunch of wonderful gifts and fun things over here to share with you. And so when we're through, or you're roaming around somehow, come over and be sure to look at those. But does anybody have any kind of questions, including the people on Zoom?
We have about 12 potential voters who are high school seniors, I think mostly would be invited, so
maybe just a little something about process for registering to vote.
Okay, I can tackle that one. Well, California, under Alex Padilla, when he was Secretary of State.
Yeah, Claudia, if you could hold the microphone real close, that's best for
Oh,
the
like
folks on
this?
Zoom. Yeah.
Yes.
So when Alex Padilla was Secretary of State, and we have a little flyer for it, they implemented a program for 16 and 17-year-olds to pre-register to vote. It gave the registrar of voters your home address, your name, date of birth, and that way they could contact you when you turn 18 to finalize the process. Because now Senator Padilla said many 18-year-olds aren't thinking about registering to vote when they turn 18. We have paper registration forms, and you can also register to vote at registertovote.ca.gov. And that is the California State Secretary of State's office. And you can register in one of 11 different languages. So that's the first step. And then some basic things to know is that the ballot is not graded. So you do not have to vote for everything. And that is, I think, a hurdle that sometimes first-time voters have to get past, thinking I must be knowledgeable on everything and every candidate in order to vote. So if you voted for just one particular item, your vote counts. And what your vote also does, no one will know how you voted, but your age demographics, your ethnicity demographics all go into that information that's reported out. And right now, based on 2022 voting, the vast majority of voters were older, homeowners, and predominantly, and white people disproportionate to our percentage of the state's population. So how do we reach people to make them understand their vote counts? And locally can be a good place to start. Who is running for school board? Who's running for city council? How do you find that out? Come January, the League of Women Voters will have a nonpartisan website, vote411.org. And you will put your address in, and it will bring up the ballot, and you will see all the candidate races and all the ballot measures for your home address. But it won't tell you how to vote. And the candidates cannot attack other candidates. And the ballot measures, you'll see the file pros and cons and rebuttals. And so it's a very helpful way to kind of start doing some research. In order to let people in government in every level know that you're concerned, it's not enough to just post on social media. You need to boost those statistics in there so they say, oh, you know, they don't know you only voted on one thing possibly, or what you voted for, but they know that you're paying attention. And it's a tool. It's just one of many tools in your life to use to help make change in our community.
The only thing I would add really is to be mindful of who your peers are. You know, you're here and it's a great privilege to be here tonight and hear this information, but you have so many classmates, right, in your school, in your community, in your family that are facing the same issue. So they may not know, so please share that information. The other reality that I think you have to be mindful of is, especially for students who were not born here or whose parents were not born here, the election process is very intimidating. I was born in Nicaragua. I came here when I was 1.5 years. My parents did not have any knowledge of the American political election system. So when I turned 18, I didn't have a model to follow. I didn't know who to turn to. And you have that reality within your peers as well. And so they may not have the resources from their own home, from their parents to say, how do I vote? Should I vote, right? And you have so many cultures that come through Sacramento that being involved in politics or elections is just not a good thing, right? So many of our third world, or what's referred to as third world countries, we don't participate because it's bad for you. You can get killed for it. But just be mindful of how we talk about the accessibility of voting and the experience of those who are interested or able to vote. They just don't know how to do it because of their cultural background.
There's a question right there.
I'm a little bit confused about a couple of things. First of all, first question is, what are the actual registration dates or that you have, the last day to register, I guess, or can you actually register the day you vote? So the question was, as far as registration is concerned to vote, what's the timeline, or I've heard that you actually can register the day you vote, or what is that? Could you clarify that?
Sure. Until a few years ago, you had to have gotten your registration in by 15 days prior to the election. And if you missed that, then you wouldn't be able to vote in that upcoming election. But in California now, you can, if you miss that 15-day cutoff, that means they can't get the information mailed to you before the election. After that date and up to and on election day, you can go to the registrar's office, or we're in early voting counties. So we have vote centers that open 11 days prior and 4 days prior over the weekends prior to the election. And what you do is you're going to go in and do like a provisional registration, and you'll cast a ballot. And after all the other votes, I'm told, are counted, the mail-ins, the in-person, they go to those stacks of provisionals and they look you up on the state database. Let's say you used to live in Los Angeles and you moved to Sacramento County, but if you didn't vote anywhere else in the state and you're showing Sacramento now as your home, they will, and you're otherwise eligible, you're over 18, you're a full citizen, they will register you, and now they will count your ballot. So no one can say, oh, I missed the cutoff, because that option is open. And many people have done it. The league has members that we do poll watching, and many people come in and do that. But it is checked before their ballots are counted, but now they'll be registered in their new county.
Thank you.
I actually have two questions, but I'm only going to lead with the first one. Can you, either one of you, talk about folks who've been incarcerated and what is their eligibility to vote here in California?
So I have a little handout from the registrars, and they print this in multiple languages. So in 2020, the citizens of California voted in a change via the proposition. And so up until that time, if anyone in prison could not vote, and anyone on parole could not vote. But that parole limitation was done away with. So on this criminal history flyer, it says you must be a United States citizen, resident of California, 18 years or older on election day, not currently serving a state or federal prison term for the conviction of a felony, and not found mentally incompetent by a court. So that has opened the door for people on parole to vote.
But not in prison. But the ones in prison are able to vote.
Right, but the State League of Women Voters is hoping to make that a change. They are working on that at the state level. And you should know, in Sacramento County, I'm part of the county league, but the State League of Women Voters office is headquartered in Sacramento. So when it comes to state-related bills in the Assembly or the Senate, statewide propositions, They take the lead on that.
So clarification, so somebody who's out of prison but on parole, they could still, they're eligible.
Right.
Okay, my second question is to Miriam. I'm not sure how to phrase this. What are some of the things that the church can do, the pastors from the pulpit, to encourage people to vote, not telling them what to do, but if there's something that the church, the diocese can do to encourage people to vote?
Yeah, so there's a lot we can do. There's a lot more that we can be doing to encourage people to vote. Bishop Soto really likes to encourage the clergy to talk about issues not on election day, not during the month of election, because by that time, most of us have already received the information that we need to make up our minds on how we're going to vote on a particular issue, on a particular candidate. And so what Bishop really encourages is, especially for clergy, talk about these issues throughout the whole year. This has to be a constant conversation, right? Doesn't have to be a proposition that we are, debating to have a homily on something, right? We have so many examples in our scripture that tell us that we have to speak up, right? When we're baptized or anointed prophet, priest, prophet, and king, right? And we don't hear enough how to be a prophet, how to be a prophetic voice in our communities. And to be have a prophetic voice means to stand up, to call out injustice for what it is. And that's something that we can do, whether from the pulpit, from our ministries, and just within our families too. The second part is education. I think many of us saw when the California Catholic Conference had a campaign on Proposition 1, which is a constitutional amendment to enshrine the fundamental right to abortion. And so what we found, I think we realized, is there's an assumption that Catholics really understand Catholic social teaching. That we really understand, right, that richness of our faith, and we don't. Because it's a difficult topic. There's people's lives involved, right? And so are we able to talk about a dialogue, talk about a topic that's so difficult? And that's what we're missing. And our church, our diocese, we need to be an example of how to have a civil dialogue. One that we're not trying to, make sure the other person concedes, but to have a conversation as to why do you feel this way about this position, right? Why do you have that position on the issue? And let's find that common ground. So education, encouraging clergy, really educating clergy to talk about politics. I don't know if you guys know, but about 70% of our clergy here in the Diocese of Sacramento are international. And we have to be mindful of that reality because they're not familiar with how we talk about political issues in the United States, right? We shy away from that. And so how do we educate our clergy? How do we educate through formation, catechism, confirmation, through our schools? But really the strength of the church is its parishes. This is where you live your faith. And so ministries like Pathways for Justice is a great example of how we can really encourage people in our community to vote.
I have a follow-up to that question, if it's okay. You said that Bishop Soto wanted, sorry, I want to.
A follow-up to that, Miriam. You said that our Bishop Soto wants priests to talk about issues year-round, not just around the elections. And so what I'm wondering is what is he doing to encourage that? Because I haven't seen that very much. And so I'm wondering if you can let us know, and if there's anything we as just the lay people can do to help that happen.
Yeah, great question. And when Bishop and I talk about this issue, we laugh, because I think there's a misunderstanding as to what happens when Bishop tells clergy to do something. We all think it's automatic, right? They're going to do it. The bishop told them to talk about it. Not the reality, right? We're all humans. We all decide on what's important to us, what we're going to talk about. So we're not seeing that response, even though Bishop will send a personal letter to every single clergy member in the diocese and say, talk about this issue. Here are some points for discussion, right? He'll even write out a letter, and some priests will read out that letter. at mass. And that's okay, right? At least the message gets shared. For example, even in our racism work, I have a couple people here who participate. They came to talk to me about it. This is an issue. We're not doing enough. And what that led to was a meeting with Bishop and said, these are our recommendations. How can we, the laity, help Bishop and clergy to talk and understand these issues? Because the laity, you hold so much power in education, and sometimes our priests are so busy that they forget they don't have time to research these issues. So I would encourage everybody here, if there's something that you really want them to talk about, research it, give them a couple pointers. Hey, you know what, this is coming up. If you're not aware of it, here's some things that I wrote out for you. If you could just please consider it. You know, if it's coming from the USCCB, even better, or the California Catholic Conference, so that the priest knows that there is some authority behind it, but it's something that's important to their community.
Miriam, you spoke about the parishes being so important to spreading the word about Catholic social teaching. And I appreciate that the diocese has been supportive of that. And one of the tools you're using now is the block notes. So I wonder if you could say a little about what that is. And it's an attempt, I guess, to connect parishes and their efforts and build this community of faith addressing Catholic social teaching.
Yeah, so we're trying to, get with the times a little bit, use the tools that are available to us to spread the gospel, to really encourage folks to love their faith. So we're using this new platform called Flocknote. Flocknote is a platform that allows us to send emails, text messages to anybody who signs up. So this year, we started 2 new Flocknotes, at least the ones that I run. One is on Care for Creation. So anybody who signed up gets a monthly newsletter. I try my best to do a monthly newsletter. And I share resources on what's coming out of the Vatican, prayers. How can you put this into practice, right? How can you support the creation care teams at our parishes? And the second newsletter we have is social justice. That one's newer, thanks to Doug and many other parishioners and other parishes that encouraged us to take this on. And not only do we share what's going on at parishes, but again, we share resources, what's coming out of the USCCB, the Vatican, some great webinars that are coming out of Georgetown University. And that's really a way that we can support, from a long distance, all the parishes that are really working on social justice.
So how can people plug into that?
Interesting. So that's where we still need to get better. I need to share it on our social media. But if you go onto our diocesan website and you find under offices Catholic Charities and Social Concerns, you should be able to find the link to the Flocknote. But if not, I'm happy to share it with this ministry as well.
Could you repeat that, please? Diocesan website, what?
Yeah, so the diocesan website, which is scd.org. And then under offices, if you click Catholic Charities and Social Concerns, I believe on our landing page, you should be able to click Flocknotes and sign up.
Ms. Sammartino, I know earlier when you were speaking, you were talking about the first generation families, struggling with really fully understanding the importance of voting, and then also just going through with the process of voting. I know that my dad had said a comment while we were going through the college application process. He said, I can't imagine how like immigrant parents feel when they start to do that. So I was just wondering, what are some things that are available that make it easier for families that are coming here to the United States and having children go through the voting process or the college process? What are the things that are available to make that easier?
So the California Catholic Conference, which is the statewide advocacy arm of the California Catholic bishops, on their website they have a lot of resources that we could tap into. It talks about really simplifying the voting registration process. What does it mean? It's not a very easy to read document, but the USCCB is going to republish their forming consciousness for faithful citizenship. And the bishops at their November meeting just approved several bulletin inserts and videos that are going to be published on their social media and on their website. So it's we're moving towards making this process seem not so scary. So that'll be available. And I imagine the League of Women Voters also has resources.
I can't say that we have anything specific to this yet. Oh, specific to this yet, but I'm learning tonight, this is something we should try to work on and come up with some better outreach. So starting with your generation, learning about it, you know, is one help. To be able to talk to your parents about it and show them things like vote411.org, and there are some other nonpartisan sites. Another thing that's a technical issue, next March will be the primary. And in California, in local elections within a primary, if the local candidate in a particular race passes 50% in the March primary, they've won their election. You know, for 2022, we kept hearing top two in November, because the state level offices have to go to a mandatory runoff. It doesn't matter what the primary was. In the case of the governor, he had a huge percentage, but he still had to go to a runoff in the fall. But locally, candidates can win. So we were endeavoring to get people out in June 2022 because, for example, we had 2 new people running for sheriff and 2 new people for district attorney. Somebody will get over 50%, most likely. And that's what happened. So that's another piece when you're talking to people you know about voting. The primary is very important for that reason, because local races can be won. There are 4 city council seats that will be on the March ballot, 2, 4, 6, and 8. And there's also going to be the mayor's race. If no one gets over 50% in those, then there will be a runoff. But that is something to know about the importance of the primary. And there can be ballot measures on the primary ballot. Not all of them are going to be the high flyers that we hear about in November, but there can still be school bond measures, tax-related measures on those primary ballots. Since I head the committee that does the 411 reach out to candidates and loading the proposition information, I can tell you for sure there can be propositions you don't want to miss on that primary ballot.
And I would just add, you know, your question kind of leads to obviously understanding that we have gaps, right? We could do better. So I would invite you, since you asked a question, you know, let's talk about it. What can you do, right? Well, how can you help the diocese make this a reality and connect to those first generation families who are struggling with it? So what can we do using your voice to really accomplish that?
What do you think are some of the questions and strategies one can use to critically think through, and in this case, I'm thinking more ballot measures, but possibly candidates, the literature that comes out that we get from the state or locally, usually people have statements, and then there's a pro and a con list with the propositions, and you really got to cut through the noise, because a lot of these things are written in all caps, and then more all caps, and then more all caps. So you don't really know what this thing is going to do. So my question, and especially for some of the newer voters here, do you have any thoughts on how one can sort of sift through that critically and really understand what the issues are, or what the people who are running stand for?
Well, one thing with vote411.org in January, there will be nothing that tells you how to vote. There will be a hyperlink to the information that comes out from the registrar's office. And we're able to copy and paste some of that information, like the impartial analysis, the file pros and cons, and the rebuttals. So that is usually going to be more objective. But I think you're right, getting information is a challenge. There are some other nonpartisan sites. Ballotpedia is another one that is a nonpartisan website. You do have to do some digging. When it comes to candidates, vote411.org will give them an opportunity to make a statement or statements about why they think they're most qualified. We hope to have our local league add a couple of specific questions depending on the race as well. And again, it takes some digging. I think that is a challenge. If you don't know what city council district you live in, and especially younger people, you can go look that up based on your address. And every city council person and county supervisor has would love to have you sign up for their newsletter. And you will get an email that tells you if they're having a special event in Tahoe Park. Other sometimes opportunities for students to be interns. Just a whole assortment of things. So find out what city council district you're in and sign up for their newsletter. So you start to see what's happening in your community. But yes, getting enough information, I think, is something you have to put some effort into, because the flyers that come generally are from a group supporting a particular candidate or measure or against.
I have a question also related to young people, but one of our kids who's 28, just moving on from community college, that's a long story, and is moving to San Jose. So if students are moving to another community, even if maybe they're younger and their home base is sort of here, can they register to vote in the community where their college is?
Yes. Yes, California allows that.
My question is for Miriam. I'm old and I'm white and I'm a homeowner and I vote. But how can I encourage other people without it coming across? You know, I would like to encourage people of all ethnicities and backgrounds and economic status, but they don't want to hear from me. I'm not going to impress them because I'm not, you know, they think I'm just trying to tell them what to do. I wondered if there's some, you know, strategies or some plan for reaching into, you know, the lower economic, more ethnically diverse communities that would be effective.
For me, the most effective strategy is a personal relationship, a personal invitation. I mean, if you look around here, how did you get here tonight? Somebody must have invited you, right? It's different than when you see a flyer, you're like, maybe I'll go, maybe I won't, but nobody's holding you accountable to it. Nobody's personally asking you to be there. And that's the hardest part, right? To build a relationship with somebody you may not know yet. But we have that experience. We all want to feel important and special and noticed and that we belong. And so from now, I mean, right now we're setting up right for 2024. How can you get to know somebody outside of your normal circle, right? How do we do that? Parishes have so many ministries. There's multicultural ministries, there's charismatic ministries, there's so many ministries, right? And we kind of tend to silo ourselves. But have you gotten to know somebody from that other ministry? Have you gotten to know somebody from another culture, right? There's so many multicultural events that our parishes host. Go, right? Invite one of your own friends and say, well, let's go. Let's see what this is about. And slowly you start becoming friends with those that may not identify themselves with you. That's the best strategy we have, right? The other one is to encourage people to participate. Come to the diocesan event, right? So many events that we host at the diocese and nobody shows up. because we don't do that personal invitation. But you do, the parishes are an example of personal invitation. The other recommendation I have is to listen. Right, ask a question, right? Jesus models that for us throughout the scripture. He doesn't say, I am Jesus, you must listen to me, right? He asks a question. He gets to know the person for who they are. And then through their conversation, through that natural dialogue, then there's a conversion. So that's what, unfortunately, that's the hardest thing for us to do, is to build those relationships. But then from the diocesan perspective, we have to do better to cross those bridges and be a better example and bringing people together. So I take a lot of notes today, things that we need to do better from the diocesan perspective.
I have a question for Claudia. Will the league be doing any candidate forums this year? And I have my second question is, does the league ever take stances on any propositions or any issues?
Well, to answer the first question, locally in Sacramento County, if you go to our webpage, lwvsacramento.org, you'll see a calendar scroll on the right-hand side. And so there are 2 or 3 public forums coming up in January. I made a short list. January 4th, there's going to be a mayor candidate forum, and that will be a Zoom, but the Zoom links aren't there yet. So you have to go back and check. On Wednesday, January 10th, there is going to be at Impact Foundry, there's going to be a forum for the State Assembly District 6 race. And Impact Foundry is in the same building as KVIE Public TV. And Thursday, January 18th, there will be another mayor forum at La Familia Center. So that's just the beginning. And the ones that are Zoomed that we're managing will have links on our website so you can watch them if you don't have an opportunity to do it at the time. And Channel 14 has been helpful in the past. Sometimes when on weekends, we've been permitted to manage forums at the County Board of Supervisors chamber, and Channel 14 will record those, and then we will have links on our website for that. And I forgot your second question.
The second question was, does the league ever take stance on any issues?
So when the league formed in 1920, it was when the 19th Amendment was passing. And many people, I'm told, said that women would vote the way their husbands told them and or didn't know enough about government to vote. So Carrie Chapman Catt and another co-person for the National Women's Suffrage Party closed the party down and formed the league to teach women about government. So every month they would have a topic they'd read up on and they would meet. We called it unit meetings. But sitting around, people started commenting, well, I think there's a problem. And so the league started doing studies. And based on the consensus from the study at convention, they came up with a position. So after 100 years, we have quite a number of positions. And so depending on if we have a position, yes, the league will take a yay or nay on ballot measures. The state league takes those decisions on statewide propositions. In order to see them, you would have to go to lwvc.org. That's the League of Women Voters California. Locally, we can take positions, and we have. 5 times we took a position to vote no on strong mayor, but that was based on a study first done by league members, Sacramento County league members, in 2009, when it was first proposed that we change our form of government from a council and manager to strong mayor. So yes, we do.
said you take a position on propositions and things. How about candidates?
I'm sorry, I should have said that first, never. So it's always been the lead position. We never choose favorites for parties or candidates. And so that's, I think, helps us with running forums. And our forums are not debates. I know we've had some examples recently for debates, and no. So with a forum, if there were just the two of us running for an office, the question to each candidate is always the same. I've been a timer and I have my little thing that says 30 seconds left and stop. And so each person will get the same question. They take turns being first to answer. And so in that fashion, it's, I think, properly done. Each person gets an opportunity to respond, and we don't have debates with a lot of yelling.
Thank you.
Tonight is our presentation, as we said, on call to family, community, and participation. And we've been talking about participating by learning about issues and candidates. And the question I have is, what if someone here might actually like to run for office at some point? Do you have any advice on how they might like to get started doing that?
Well, never having run for office and not planning to, when I've seen information from candidates who have run, it has been interesting to see how many of them, through their work or outside of their work, as part of being on a commission or a board, they became familiar with issues in their community. And that led them to, over time, feel like they could make a difference if they could be elected. So I think that's sort of where you start, is what are you interested in? I'm not really the best person to advise on running for office. But that's what I've seen. It's been impressive to me at times how many people running for something like city council or state assembly, when you look at the many different things they've done. But definitely you should, if it's something that you think you want to do, don't say no, just learn how to do it.
I would recommend to, especially if you, here in Sacramento, we have great community organizing groups, right? We have Sacramento ACT, which is a faith-based organizing group. We have Sacramento Environmental Justice Coalition, who we partner with for Care for Creation. We have Placer People of Faith up north of Placer County. Those types of organizations are looking at a community organizing model, right? Which isn't following one leader. It's a very grassroots, community-based model, figuring out what is a concern and priority to the local community. And so if you're interested in running for office, be part of those conversations, right? Because you're going to have to be able to listen to some heart-wrenching stories, right? People who, for various reasons, are on the brink of complete despair, and they're looking to you as a potential hope, as a potential solution. And you have to be able to carry that with you, right? Because the decisions you ultimately make will impact that person and many more like them. So it's a huge responsibility, but if that's your calling, you have really clear ideas to why do you want to be in that leadership position? Is it for personal accolades, or is it to make a difference, to really change the status quo of the community that you live in? So really reflect on why is it that you're being called to do that.
Having done door canvassing in the past, one comment that I would hear over and over again when asked if people were registered to vote, they would say, "No, I'm not registered and I don't plan to, because what difference would it make? I have no faith in our government. I have no faith that things are going to change. And it's too bad that we hear that time after time. And honestly, most of the time, people don't give you enough time to really dialogue about that. So do you have any suggestions, either of you?
Well, my first suggestion or it would be, but things are happening. I mean, people are getting elected and elected officials with their staffs, they're making decisions. So I've heard that same kind of comment. And that's why I sometimes say, well, why don't you look locally? You know, there's another universe on a national level. But nonetheless, at least locally, maybe start with your city council or your school board and those county board of supervisors, those kinds of races, and then what happens locally may impact you pretty quickly. And I think maybe for younger people too, oh, we have a bike path. Oh, you know, Elk Grove, we have this beautiful swim complex. Well, they don't fall out of the sky. You know, the people that are elected to office help make those decisions. So that's what I would say to people is, but government is still happening. People are still being elected, and you want to try to have a voice. The most interesting thing a few years ago was in Virginia. There was like a state assembly race, and Virginia had no rule about what to do if it's a tie. And it was a tie. The two candidates were literally tied. And so in that instance, they had no rule to follow. So what they did was they put each name in a film canister and they dropped it in a bowl and shook the bowl, and someone was authorized to. So there's a situation where had one more person voted for one of those candidates, now that's pretty rare to have it happen. Something else on a technical side, Proposition 13 in 1978 changed how we are taxed in California. So tax related measures have to pass by 2/3 of those voting. So when I was first here in 1988, we had to vote in bonds to build schools in 95831 because no money had been charged via developer fees for schools. So we just barely passed it, but it had to pass by 2/3, which is, students help me, 66.7 or something, yeah. So that's another thing on some of these measures that you'll see, whether it's on the primary or the statewide, it will tell you usually what it needs to vote. But if it has something to do with raising money from taxpayers, it has to pass by 2/3. 65%, sorry, it doesn't pass. So if you're concerned about your schools, or maybe there's money that needs to be spent to fix the levee or other water facilities, libraries, you know, a number of years ago, after the recession in 2007 or 8, the city council slashed several $1 million out of their contribution to the Sacramento County library system. And so after a few years, the library asked if they could put something on the property tax, and the city council said, we won't cut you anymore if you can do this small parcel tax. But we had to get to 2/3, and it was successful to, because otherwise the city of Sacramento's part of the library system was going to have to close 3 libraries. So your vote there could be really important on passing a measure like how to get extra money to the libraries.
I agree. The more personal you make the issue, the more likely you are to invest in actually voting, right? And I don't think we did a good job about that, especially for new voters, for voters who have just kind of lost faith in the system. There has to be something that's so important to you that you can't avoid but be a part of it, right? And if it does start with one proposition or one measure, then let it be, right? Start practicing that voting muscle, because many of us get really relaxed on that voting muscle. We don't read the giant booklet that comes, right? Some of us do, some of us don't. So how do we encourage people to vote is what's important to them. Can you have a conversation with that particular person, or even within your families, right? I know in my family, my dad does not vote. He has the same mentality. What's the point? Everybody else is it's already been decided. Right? And I was like, no, we worked so hard to get you that voting right. Right? But it's that constant conversation. Dad, this matters. This is important to you. This is important to grandma. You know, she's not gonna get more money from Medi-Cal or whatever. You know, there's families who are on CalWorks who are being denied of opportunity to come out of poverty because the system isn't set up for their success. We have to change that, right? And I like to really push people. So it's sometimes not received very well, but I do say, if you don't vote, then you're okay with the way that we are. Your decision not to vote is that you're okay with whatever injustice is occurring in the world right now, in our society, in our community. So if you decide not to vote, then that's your stance.
Well, I did have a gentleman from another country once kind of give the same thing as your father. Well, you know, the big guy has decided, someone in charge. But my response that day to him was, well, but not on school bonds. So the school bond is something that's not determined by a particular candidate. And he had small children, and I don't think I convinced him. But I mean, there can be issues on the ballot that will affect us, and they're not tied necessarily to a particular person being able to influence it.
We have just a few minutes left, but it's so wonderful to see all the young people here tonight. It's just incredible. I wanted to ask you if you had any ideas about how we can increase interest in voting, and whether at your schools you have any organizations or clubs that are get out the vote clubs.
We're not putting you on the spot.
We have discussions in government club where we talk about things about government. Like the last week, we talked about women candidates and if they would address more issues. Yeah, it was fun. But I think if maybe we use that platform, we can spread the word. Yeah. There you go.
Well, something else for students, and we have some brochures, and that is the election, the registrar of voters looks for people to help work the election. And students, the last time could make $270 between the training, working a weekend day, and if you get permission from your school, you can then work the election day. And I'm not sure what the pay will be next year, but that's another way to learn more about the process.
I just had a question. Can one of you go over what like the process of the presidential debate is? Like what happens during the presidential debate? Because I'm a little bit confused.
Well, I will say it used to be that the League of Women Voters managed the debates. And I would imagine that they ran it much the way we run our forums. But the League of Women Voters, I'm not sure when that changed, but suddenly we weren't doing it anymore. So I don't quite understand, you know, the process entirely. Each person's supposed to have a chance to answer the question. And I think there's supposed to be time, but I don't know if that's always the case. So how parties pick who will be there, they have their own methods for determining that.
Well, it's about time for us to end this, and I want to thank you both very much for coming and participating with us. for those of you who do not belong to St. Francis, you might suggest having one or the other of these women come to your churches. And you also in front of you have a slip that gives an evaluation. We would like to have those returned to us before you leave. So just put wonderful on it. And if you have any suggestions for us, that also would be very, very helpful. It's just been great this evening, and I'm so glad that you all came. And Richard, you didn't have a comment, did you?
I just had a room before you close.
Oh, okay, well,
It's kind of a public service announcement, since you're talking about community engagement, getting people involved. For those of you who don't know who I am actually, okay.
Come on up.
So this is public service, yes. So I'm actually a member of the Sacramento County Grand Jury. So we're currently recruiting, and it's an opportunity for folks to get involved. Once again, we're talking about people who we're a watchdog organization, and we really are here to hold our governance accountable. So if you're interested in finding about the grand jury, we're taking applications right now. It's a 1-year commitment, and so the process of putting new people on will start July the 1st. So we'll be going through this process. So I'll be over here if you want to get more information, and I have brochures, and you can share them with your friends, and I would really appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Good.
thank you. I knew that he would become a star. One more time.
Can I just say, stop at our table, see what things we have there as you're going out the door.
Oh, no, that's absolutely true. I'm going to say again, the table for the League of Women Voters has set up a number of things. There's a round table that has a few more things like buttons for the synodality program that the Pope has ventured to present. And oh gosh, this has been great. It's been great just being in all of your energies. Been very pleasant for me. And I think unless somebody has something else, there.
I would just like to say, anybody has a letter.
Oh, the letters.
Yeah, I'll come.
Oh,
around.
yes.
Thank you.
We'll pick up the letters that go to President Biden.
And there's still a few more cards here if anybody wants to take.
And yes, there's some for you to send to your public.
Yeah, feel free to take some home if they didn't
Take
get all
them
used up.
home if you
Yeah.
want. Yes.
Just one more thing for all the students, if you haven't had a chance to sign up, I want to make, each of those you were here to get.
Oh, yes. If you students did not sign up, please do that so your teachers all know that you came tonight. Okay? All right, now while we're busy with that, we're going to have the closing prayer. So again, just take a deep breath. Take a deep breath. Get centered. God, we are grateful that you love each of us, no matter our status or abilities. Thank you that you walk with children and families struggling against poverty and injustice, calling us to do the same. We ask that candidates running for election would speak out about poverty and listen to the voices of the vulnerable. Give our leaders wisdom to create solutions that empower people living in poverty to survive and thrive. Help us to answer your call to act justly, love mercy, and walk humbly with you. Amen. Thank you very much.